Yeah, but my issue really lies with training and safety. And if you own a firearm and you're not pursuing either type of training, whether it be safety or marksmanship or anything like that, functionality of a firearm, then you're really messing up.
Well, this leads right into something too.
Sure.
I was pretty annoyed / disgusted at the Uvalde Police Department's response to that whole thing, where they were waiting outside for about a year. Now, as a former law enforcement officer, you might have a different perspective on this, but it was not very good optics, where parents were being prevented from going in. Some were in handcuffs, and then they released them. And then some even went in, I heard, and were able to pull out some kids.
Yeah.
And then I heard the police were telling people inside, say help if you need help. Someone screams they need help. The guy goes in and kills them.
Yeah.
So it's like there just seems to be, there's some disconnect there about what's going on in the whole situation.
Well, there very well could be some leadership culpability here. You know, if you're the incident commander, that's a lot of weight on your shoulders. I've been an incident commander before, and I can tell you that the way that most law enforcement is trained in this country is that if it's an active shooter situation, you task organize the group of people, officers that you have, men and women, and you get them in a file, and you get them in there, and you take down the shooter. And I'm simplifying it. I may be giving you a reductionist view of it, but they are trained to do this. I think eventually the BORTAC group, the agents, the Border Patrol, which by the way makes this a federal case because this young man discharged his firearm at one of the BORTAC people, and they're federal officers, so this involves the federal government as well. I know Chief Arredondo has now allegedly stopped cooperating.
I heard that yesterday, yes.
With the Department of Public Safety, and so he'll have to answer for his actions. I'm sure he will have to reply in writing and maybe give verbal testimony. It needs to be looked at because clearly
something was going on.
But that's another thing. People you mentioned earlier how we get compared to other countries. Well, when you have a national police force like they have, for example, I'll give you 2 examples. Israel, okay? They are all trained the same, okay? They're trained the same. They're in sync. Ireland, they have the Garda. The Garda, that's their police department. National police, they have the same training standards. When you go from, I don't know, I'll just pick some place out. For example, the California Highway Patrol, or you go to a small town in Ohio somewhere, they're not getting the same funding for training. They don't even have the same amount of officers or the same hiring standards. So we need to really look at that. There's probably about 700,000 sworn peace officers in this country. And I'm only giving you a rough estimate because unfortunately I think a lot of experienced officers are retiring.
What peace officer, what exactly
peace officer. So every state has a penal code that dictates who a peace officer is. In California, I think it was Penal Code 830.5, and it indicates what a peace officer is. Okay. And a peace officer basically it's an old term. It dates back to the days of the Wild West, and a peace officer could be a marshal or town deputy, sheriff, or something like that. But they're held accountable. Once you swear on the Constitution that you'll defend and protect the people of your particular jurisdiction, you have a duty to do that. And these men and women had a duty to do this. I'm sure that some of them may be frustrated. This was a leadership call, and they need to focus in on the chief.
Is that what it was? Leadership telling them not to?
Absolutely. If you just look at today, if you move the wrong way as a police officer, you now in some jurisdictions can be subject to civil suit.
Sure. It's a thankless job these days. That goes without saying. It's a thankless job.
But also, too, we need to keep our standards high and try to hire the best people we can.
I'm all for more pay for police officers, better training, having them all be purple belts in jiu-jitsu, just having them be the best qualified force they can be. Get a higher caliber person.
And annually, we need to look at training and say, should we modify? Should we do this now? I believe in community policing. I believe in all of that. You've got to stay in touch with the community you're hopefully protecting. And that's a hard job right now.
Absolutely.
And the easiest thing for a politician to do is to throw a peace officer under the bus. Now, we've had some extreme examples like we had in Minneapolis, where officers went too far and broke the law.
Well, I was actually about to bring that up too, but before we get into that part,
Sure.
the guy who got rid of the shooter in Uvalde there, that was a Border Patrol agent, wasn't it?
I believe it was, yes.
And what did that guy do? Did he just go rogue?
No,
or was he
no.
part of,
I believe he was probably a part of the BORTAC assault team. They have, they call them sometimes CERT, Special Response Team, SRT. Some may even still call it SWAT. That was an old Special Weapons and Tactical Team, SWAT. That was an old term.
Because that one guy, he's getting all the praise.
Well, yeah.
The rest of the Uvalde department's
but trust me,
getting...
anytime you have a shooting, you go through a little bit of hell. As well you should. We have to make sure that this homicide was justifiable, that this officer took this individual's life and it was a justifiable homicide. So he's going to have a blood alcohol test. They're going to test him for any drugs or beer or
But this one's
alcohol.
pretty clear that it was.
Well, yes, you would think so. But when you get into court, the minutia comes up. So the department is going to prepare him for all of this. They're going to have him write a report. Everybody on that team is going to have to write a report. Everybody in those departments are going to have to write reports. And then probably the Texas Rangers and the Department of Justice, because this involved a federal agency, will get involved with this investigation. Now, what we have on all the food networks, I was going to say, my stomach's talking to me. What we have on all the networks is a lot of hyperbole right now.
Sure.
They're not. Some of it may be fact, and some of it may be hearsay. So we need to be cautious about that. But I think we're getting closer to where this originated, and I think it's with Chief Arredondo.
So with him, though, what could it possibly have been his reasoning in regards to not deploying the officers in there sooner? Because all that time being wasted, that did cost lives.
Well, here's my thing. The one thing I'd like to know for sure, was he remotely giving this command or was he on scene? That's an important part of this, okay? First of all, he should have been on scene. If he wasn't, he should have deferred command to the ranking individual there.
Yes.
So this is detail that we need to have because there are chains of command.
Sure.
And at some point, though, the BORTAC supervisor, whoever he was or she was, they probably made the decision after 35 minutes or so, is my understanding, to go in and take this. Now, Arredondo may have believed possibly that this was still... not an active shooting situation, but maybe a hostage situation. I'm assuming that is what his argument may be. But you'd have to support that with evidence.
Right.
You'd have to hear shooting. You survey the building for sure. You scout out all the access, the ingress and egress areas, and you make sure that that's the case. But you don't have time. Usually, you have to make this decision in a couple of minutes to task organize your people as they go in and take on this threat.
It's also important to be able to talk about some of the details like this with a little bit of nuance because neither side is very good at that usually. They get a headline, they get a sentence or two, and then they just run with it.
That's true.
They run with it into the ideological direction they want to run with it.
Yeah.
But all of these things, they really need to be broken down. You got to take a look at the individual circumstances and examine them thoroughly because it's hard to just get like a blanket judgment just from a couple headlines. And this is something that I don't think many people do anymore. So some people will say, oh, that was gun violence. That's all I need to know. No guns.
Yeah.
We need to be doing something different. Make sure you vote blue no matter who in November to make sure that they're going to be giving legislation that gets rid of guns or makes it harder or something.
Yeah, my question would be, because I've been involved in some of the consulting for some religious organizations in this area to harden their perimeters, to make their facilities more secure, because after the Carolina church shooting, after the Jewish temples in California and in the San Diego area, there was an emphasis put on additional security now in religious places of worship. And so I got involved in helping folks with that in this community, several churches, 2 Jewish temples, and they all pretty much bought off on it. But what we have to ask for this school is, what were your security measures? Did you go into, they're going to have to interview some of the people that were in there, the staff, the teachers, and they're going to have to find out what happened here. I know there was a rumor of an open door, but now I'm hearing that possibly was not the case. So we need to know those things, because it's very painful to, and I think about those small children. My heart is just broken, absolutely. And like I said, I have a small daughter, and I think about her when I think about situations like that. I can imagine what these parents are going through. So
their life will never be the same again.
We owe it to those families, those children, to get this right, to not so much assert blame, but to find out what went terribly wrong here, if something did go terribly wrong.
Well, doing anything possible for in the future to prevent it. Pragmatic solutions, whether that means
absolutely
more protection at a school.
Yeah.
But that's why it's important, like you said, to kind of figure out exactly how this happened, so that it can be more prevented in the future.
Yeah.
Because even like you said, with the most strict of gun laws enacted tomorrow, there's still all of these guns right now. Now you can say what you want about an 18-year-old being able to purchase 2 AR-15s out of nowhere. Maybe that could be a problem. But there's still all these guns here already. So even if you were to do the strictest of gun law now, they're all still here. They're all still here. They could all still be... And that's not going to stop the things that happen in Kensington and Chicago. Those guns are not affected by gun laws.
But you might find commonality in these young shooters. You might find psychological or... sociological issues, the family structure. I mean, the first person he shot was
his grandmother, right?
His grandmother. So what was happening there? I mean, he is 18 years old. So we have 18-year-old people in the military who carry M16s, but they carry them responsibly because they've been trained, right?
So I get this topic. I get it because I was someone that was bullied as a kid.
Yeah.
Because I was a much different person then.
Right.
I had severe anxiety, maybe even like on a spectrum almost. That's how bad it was. But when you're like that and you don't know how to defend yourself, you don't know how to be assertive, and I think for someone like myself, it was like Asperger-like, autistic-like, severe anxiety.
Yeah.
You just can't for whatever reason. But what it does do, it boils up.
Yeah.
And you build resentments. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't have fantasies about like kicking the crap out of people in my grade. And I can certainly see how something like that is just an extension of what exactly I know I went through.
Yeah, I mean, but
what do you do about that?
But I think what you just said is probably pretty normal. You wanted to kick the crap out of people your age who were bullying you or older, right?
Yeah.
This guy walks in and kills little defenseless children. I mean, these children were small.
Well, this is something Jordan Peterson talks about, right?
Right.
It's the existential angst of trying to say, not only will I kill myself, which he basically did, death by cop, pretty much.
Yeah.
But he goes, I want to show and cause as much destruction as I possibly can.
Yeah. Similar
to one of those German pilots that purposefully crashes into the mountains with a plane full of people. Right? Same kind of thing. So there's a lot of different things going on here. And so in America, I think we are in a sick society.
Yeah.
Right? There's a lot of mental health issues, a lot of bullying issues. Social media certainly is not a very good influence, especially for those of us who are the most vulnerable. Yeah. Like, I consider myself very lucky now to have been gotten out of that darker space. But I can see it when you're a kid. It might seem impossible to get out. Your frontal lobe of your brain is not even fully developed until you're 25.
Yeah.
So when someone's 18 like he is, you're still half dumb.
Well, you and I have talked about the book by Robert Sapolsky, Behave. We talked about it very briefly. Someday when you have time, I want you to read it. He's really an expert in this area. He breaks it down in a way. The prefrontal cortex, which governs behavior. He makes the science easy for you to digest. And there is a science behind this. So my thinking on this is, if our mental health delivery system was available, if it was a situation where all our social systems, our social workers, everybody was funded properly to get out there into the communities, and I know I'm asking for utopia here, but we're marginal right now. I mean, barely hanging on.
Yeah.
And you're right about our society. There's something happening, but it has a lot to do with mental health, and we have to do something about it.
And this might be something you disagree with.